Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for attending the third roundtable of the webinar series Inside Club Football, organized by Johan Cruyff Institute in partnership with Portas Consulting. We will dedicate today's session to talk about the fight against climate change with Ramón Alarcón, General Director of Business at Real Betis, and Thom Rawson, Head of Sustainability of Football for Future. Harry Bryan, Senior Consultant at Portas, will moderate the session. I would like to remind all the attendees that you can also participate in the conversation, typing your questions to our speakers in the question tab you can see on the bottom right of your screen. And in case you cannot follow the whole session, you will receive the recording afterwards. So that's all from my side. Harry, Thom, and Ramón, good afternoon to you all. And Harry, I give you the floor.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Gemma, and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining the third webinar of our series, Inside Club Football, where we take you behind the scenes of the leading football clubs to explore the strategic decision-making that drives success on and off the pitch. Today, we'll be tackling football's relationship with the environment, discussing how clubs are starting to build a more sustainable culture within the beautiful game. I'm Harry Bryan from Portas Consulting, a global strategy consultancy dedicated to the world of sport. And I'm very happy to be joined by two of the leading voices when it comes to elevating the importance of environmental responsibility across football, and who are already demonstrating how clubs can incorporate sustainability into their business models. Without further ado, I'd like to allow the panel members to briefly introduce themselves. Ramón, if you can kick us off, that would be great.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, thank you to the Johan Cruyff Institute and also to Portas Consulting to invite myself and Real Betis to this webinar, because for us it's a pleasure to have the option to talk, to spread out what are we doing in the terms of environmental issues. And my name is Ramón Alarcón. I am the CEO of Real Betis. In Real Betis, we are 3 general managers. One is in charge of all the sports issues. Another one is in charge of all the corporate issues, and myself, I'm in charge of business, but business also communication, social issues, because all the things that have to have something to do with the brand and with the relation that we have with the people outside the club. No? So for that, I'm in charge all about social issues, and we have developed this program called Forever Green and all these actions related to the green issues.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ramón. It's great to have you and look forward to getting into some of those issues throughout the webinar. Thom, I'll head over to you now. If you could introduce yourself and also Football for Future.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Likewise, thank you very much for the introductions and the opportunity to be part of this discussion this afternoon. So my name's Thom Rawson. I'm Head of Sustainability at Football for Future. And I'll briefly introduce Football for Future. So we are a football environmental not-for-profit. Our mission is to build a more environmentally sustainable culture within the English game and across the world. And we're made up of sustainability experts, climate scientists, and football creatives, which means that we're underpinned by peer-reviewed climate studies. We're experts in the sustainability landscape across English and world football. And importantly, we try and communicate around sustainability and climate change in the language of football to try and reach the audience that may not have engaged with these important issues before. And we do this in 2 ways. Firstly, by raising awareness of that relationship between football and climate change. So as part of that, we've delivered educational workshops. Last year, we delivered to over 150 young people in London in partnership with Nike and their partners Chelsea and Tottenham Hotspur. Workshops setting out what the relationship is between climate change and football. We also support player champions to speak out about climate change and use their platform to make a difference. And our player champions so far include Katie Rood, who is a footballer for Southampton and New Zealand, and also David Wheeler, who is a footballer for Wycombe Wanderers. And also we support, amplify and report on football environmental initiatives and news stories. So please do follow us on social medias at FTBL for Future and you can sign up to our newsletter on our website, footballforfuture.org. That's one side of what we do. The other side, and what I look after most closely, is supporting clubs and other football organisations to become more sustainable. So we supported clubs from the Premier League to non-league to develop sustainability action plans and sustainability strategies. Our kind of process includes a really comprehensive environmental review to understand where the club's at, delivering staff training workshops to make sure that these concepts are well embedded across the culture of the club, curating bespoke sustainability strategies and communications campaigns to ensure that those messages are as impactful as possible. And on those fronts, we have some huge announcements coming imminently about Premier League clubs that we've been working with, and we're really excited to kick off soon. Brilliant.
Thank you very much, Tom. And it all sounds extremely exciting. Looking forward to getting into some of the work you do throughout the course of the webinar. It's clear that there is a growing expectation being placed on sport. 69% of young fans support environmental change and want to see sports act more sustainably. And there seems to be some momentum too. The work of Football for Future, Real Betis, and also clubs across the top European leagues, with roughly 10% of clubs having committed to the UN's Sport for Climate Action initiative. Whilst Forest Green Rovers are often cited as the world's greenest football club and a best practice example given their progressive approach to the environment, not all clubs might have the capacity or capability to carbon copy this approach. I'm really interested in understanding over the course of this webinar what's needed now and in the future to take meaningful action against climate change, and how wide-reaching the financial and non-financial benefits for clubs of building the sustainability culture could be. As Gemma mentioned at the outset, please feel free to post any of your questions in the chat over the course of the webinar. Tom, I'll come to you first to tee us off. How would you define football's relationship with the environment as I guess, a start for 10?
Yeah, that's a really, really important starting point, the relationship between football and climate change and football and sustainability. So in two parts, first of all, it's important to recognise that football is vulnerable to climate change. Our chairman, David Goldblatt, who's a bit of a legend in this space and was described by the Sunday Times as perhaps the best football historian ever, which is a great line to have in your bio, in the last few years authored a landmark report called Playing Against the Clock. So this explored that relationship between football and climate change and concluded that almost 1 in 4 professional men's clubs in England can expect total or partial annual flooding in the stadiums by 2050. And the reality is that for many clubs, they won't need to wait that long. In 2015, Carlisle United's home ground Brunton Park was caught up in the extensive flooding caused by Storm Desmond. The team were forced out of the stadium for 7 weeks, and it was 9 months before the staff and everybody behind the scenes could return to their permanent office facilities. And studies show that the likelihood of that storm was increased 59% by climate change. And only months ago, we saw a trio of storms cause extensive chaos and damage across the UK, and that included obviously the football pyramid. So Basford United FC, they're a club in just outside of Nottingham. They think they sustained around £10,000 worth of damage to their facilities as a result of those storms. Tadcaster Albion, who share a ground with the Leeds United's women's team, they suffered flooding for the 6th time in 2 years. And Shoreham FC on the south coast, who have a really strong sustainability agenda, actually, they also experienced damage as a result of the storm. I spoke to their co-chairman, Stuart Slaney, around a year ago, and he told us that extreme weather is the biggest problem we face as a football club. He said, not everyone makes the link to climate change, but I do. And it's not only storms and flooding, but it's also heat. So in the 2020 Olympics women football final between Sweden and Canada, that was postponed and moved to a different city due to heat concerns. And actually, Sweden's goalkeeper Zecira Musovic tweeted earlier, to even consider playing is a direct danger to the player's health due to extreme weather conditions. So that first point is clear, I think, that football is vulnerable to climate change.
Brilliant. Yeah, and I think that tees up the discussion really nicely and provides that context of why football clubs really need to, I guess, act and build that sustainable culture. I think on that point you mentioned, Thom, around environmental sustainability, building that culture, what exactly do we mean and how does it relate to a football club's operations?
Well, firstly, I think it would be, you can talk about on one hand football being vulnerable to climate change, which it is across all levels of football. But then on the other hand, football has a huge environmental impact, and it has a huge carbon footprint, for example. And you can imagine, take for example a match day experience. So I'm a Burnley fan, so imagine I was going to an away game. And every step of the way, there are carbon emissions and environmental impact and things that I experience or decisions that I make as a fan. So first of all, making my decision about getting to the stadium. When I log onto that away team's website and go to the point in the website that says, how do I get here? Is that making the assumption I'm driving there? Is it telling me all about parking? Or is it telling me about all the ways that I can get there by public transport? How accessible even is the ground by public transport? How convenient is that for me? And is it affordable? Are there any incentives that are included in the ticket price, for example? These issues are really important because it's estimated that around 70% of football's carbon footprint comes from travel. So when I arrive at the ground, I might want a pre-match, a beer and some food. There's lots of considerations there. Where is that sourced from? Are there vegan options available? What's it served in? What's the packaging? Is there too much packaging? Is it recyclable? How am I expected to dispose of it? Or is it reusable? So can I then reuse, for example, take plastic cups back to a facility for them to be washed and reused? When I'm watching the game, I'm aware that I'm in a stadium, especially if that's a newly constructed stadium. How fundamental was sustainability a key tenet of the design and current operation of that ground? How efficient is the stadium? I can see lots of energy being used, floodlights, screens. Where is the energy sourced from? Is there renewable energy sources? Is there renewable generation on site? And then also the players on the pitch. So how did they arrive? What were their travel options? Are they drinking from single-use plastic bottles on the pitch? What are their shirts made from? Who are they sponsored by? Have they ever spoken up about climate change? And this is all the stuff I can see behind the scenes. What systems are in place? What policies are driving decision-making? How are the training facilities and office facilities managed? What equipment is used? And how extensive is the business travel? So, for example, the scouting network, which will be global and have its own significant carbon footprint. So there are so many elements of that along the match day experience that bring to life, what some of these sustainability issues are for a football club.
Yeah, definitely, and no shortage of questions almost that as a club you'd have to broach when tackling the topic of environmental sustainability. Ramón, I'd love to bring you in as a club that has gone through this journey and is still on the journey, and I guess viewed as almost trailblazers in the space. Could you explain to the audience a bit more about the journey Real Betis has been on from an environmental sustainability angle? Oh, sorry, Ramón, I think you're just on mute. No worries. While we wait for Ramón just to get his mic back, Thom, perhaps if I come to you, given some of the conversations that you're having with different clubs up and down the country, when it comes to almost building that business case for sustainability, it'd be great to understand how you frame that and how you present that to the clubs. And for me, I think you've touched on the downside of not doing, but is it just as much about the upside of doing and the benefits that it could bring to clubs?
That's right. Yeah, I think there's there's a difference. in opinion, depending on how close you are and how much you associate with the issue of climate change, how important you might deem it to be in terms of how you run a business. That includes how you run a football organization or a football club. But I think the business case for sustainability is reasonably clear. It might be less tangible, and which is something that is hopefully we can bring some light to. So we've already touched upon the risks associated with climate change, that clubs and facilities can be vulnerable to extreme weather events. Obviously, having an awareness of what that vulnerability looks like and the impacts of that might mean a natural inclination to increase your resilience or adapt to the changes that are on the horizon. So the benefit of doing that is obviously guarding against costs of rescheduling or postponements or that storm damage, for example, as the likelihood of extreme weather events increases. That's quite a direct answer on the impact of climate change, but more on the business case for investing in a sustainability strategy. I think you can think about it in terms of the social return, the financial return, and the regulations around it. So firstly, from a social perspective, as you mentioned in your introduction there's an increased expectation and an increased pressure from fans and wider society. I think there's an increasing awareness of inaction and questions being asked when inaction is recognized. A similar stat to what you use, my one says that 76% of fans agree that they care about how their football club impacts the environment. So I think it's sometimes unspoken, and there's maybe no way, there's a lack of maybe a platform for that to be really visible at the moment, but that underlying concern really is there. For a business, that having that sense of purpose, having sustainability embedded as a key principle does inspire colleagues, it inspires better business, and it inspires future talent to want to work for the organization. We know that young people want to work for a sustainable organization, and broadly across society, people want to see their own values reflected in the organizations that they associate themselves, whether that be supporting a football club, buying merchandise, or working for. So I think that from a social perspective, that case is clear. From a financial perspective, more directly, sustainability can bring really significant commercial growth, innovation, and new sponsorship opportunities. There's an article on the sustainability report, which is a sports sustainability really useful resource, a website. There's a page there that says sustainability is a top priority for sports sponsorship activation, and that's a really valuable article. It speaks about sponsorship revenues potentially growing up to 10% when there is a genuine sustainability agenda associated. And it brings the example of Vivo Power, a sustainable energy provider. They hold the rights as Tottenham Hotspur's official battery technology partner, as part of the club's acceleration towards net zero. So there's completely new sort of sponsorship activation opportunities there. And obviously, still on the financial theme, efficiencies, better ways of running facilities and your operations, reduced energy usage and reduced resource usage does of course lead to lower operational costs. As a rule of thumb, sustainable facilities are 30% cheaper to operate. And those are all the I guess the carrots, the things that you might want to strive for. But what we're also seeing is regulations. The sustainability is on its way to becoming a license criteria for Bundesliga clubs, and there's no doubt that others will follow. And this will be a transition from sustainability becoming a requirement rather than an opportunity or a nice to have or something that might be a unique selling point for a club, something that there is a minimum requirement for, a fundamental. And we're seeing that at the Premier League. We can see that they are developing a more robust approach. They are gathering around the UN Sports for Climate Action framework, recruiting ahead of sustainability, and it feels obvious that sort of transition is happening across the world.
Yeah, definitely. And it probably feels like a nice time to bring Ramon in. Hopefully your microphone's working now, to bring to life some of those benefits and the journey that Real Betis has gone on in the environmental sustainability space.
Okay, hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, it's working.
So sorry for that. There was some problem with the firewall. I have to change it to my mobile. And then sometimes when something doesn't work, always you have to switch off, and then switch on. This is but because I was trying to unmute my microphone, but I couldn't. So sorry for the inconvenience.
No worries.
Yes, talking about yes, I'm going to try to tell a little bit about the story about Real Betis and the green issues. Our story started 3 or 4 years ago because we had a sponsor. It was called Green Earth, and it was a IT company that they created using blockchain technology. They try to do a social project so people can buy 1 square meter of forest, but it means that they don't buy the land. What they do is they put the money to that oblige the company to maintain the forest in right conditions. So these people introduced ourselves to Climate Neutral Now, the program by United Nations. So we started to understand how important was all the issues that are behind the climate crisis that we have. So Climate Neutral Now, we did with them the first approach was a marketing campaign. We offer, the sponsor was Green Earth, so we replaced Green Earth for Climate Neutral Now in one special match. We play with a special jersey. It was a sustainable jersey. They were very surprised about.
I think you've just gone on mute again, Ramon. I think we've just lost Ramon again. Hopefully he can rejoin. Let's see.
Can you hear me now again?
Yep, working again.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, all good. We can hear you.
Hello, can you hear me now? Hello, hello.
Yes.
Hello, hello, hello.
We can hear you.
You can hear me now? Okay, so I continue. I don't get the sound back. So after that, they invite us to participate in COP25. It took place in Madrid. It was going to take place in Chile, but due to crisis, the riots that took place in Chile, finally they moved to Madrid. So we participated in the COP number 25. And then after that, the people from the United Nations told us that they were completely surprised about the power that a football club we have as a speaker. So we decided to enroll ourselves to jump into the Climate Neutral Now program, and then 1 year later we also jump into a Climate Pledge program. One is from United Nations, and the other one is from Amazon. So since that, we started to create. Our first idea was to become the most sustainable club in the world, and this was very good in terms of the value of our brand, because now all the stakeholders, all the young people, as we have mentioned before, 69% of the people are aware about all these environmental issues. So it was a very good point from the brand point of view. But when we started working on this sector, we noticed that it was a real problem. And the idea here is not to be the first, is not to win the champions, but it's just to help, because there is no planet B. So there is a big crisis in front of us. So the idea is just be one more, a part of a team. So this is why we decided to launch the platform called Forever Green. That is a platform in where we invite companies, different and also people to activate, to change the way they behave. And with companies, we are very happy to work with them to develop projects together, because our idea is just to try to be one more in this war that we are having against the climate crisis. So in our opinion, in these issues, you have to be very real. If you try to do something in the environmental sector just for taking social benefits or for taking brand benefits, people will notice that, and you will get a very bad feedback. So you have to be very real. You have to work for because your values things is the best thing you have to do, and the result that you have to aim is just to get a better green world, but nothing to do with business.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ramon. Can you hear us?
I can hear you now.
Great. I was just going to ask, off the back of the Forever Green platform, we saw the announcement last week with a partnership with the Turkish side, Istanbul Başakşehir. How do you see the Forever Green platform developing and bringing other clubs on that journey? I think we've lost. I'll come to you now quickly. I think we got a question from the audience from Roderick de Vries touching on the point of building this Europe-wide organization. Is there a green UEFA equivalent of, I guess, building and pooling together clubs on that environmental sustainability topic?
So what's in place at the moment is what you refer to, which is the UN Sports for Climate Action framework. So that's a platform that exists, which a number of teams have signed up to. So the Premier League itself has recently signed up. Clubs like Southampton, Liverpool, Tottenham, an increasing number are signing up, and that fundamentally is a commitment to reach net zero. That's open to not just football clubs and not just professional clubs, but all sports organisations. So that is really the sort of worldwide platform that brings together sports organisations around this topic, and that's recently become more that was set up as an entirely voluntary platform, and it was based around sort of five principles that would help inform how a sports organisation would step up to climate action. That's recently kind of the requirements around that have changed, so it's much more associated with net zero as a target and science-based targets. So there is a need to confirm for your sports organisation what your climate and carbon reduction targets are based on the science, both in the short term and the long term. So that's something again that is becoming more robust and increasing, the expectation on what sports organisations need to deliver.
Brilliant. That's super helpful. And Ramon, maybe if I can come back to you in terms of the partnership recently with Istanbul Başakşehir and how you see the Forever Green platform growing in the future.
Okay, our idea is that we launched the platform at the end of the 2019, so so it says less than 2 years, and we have done many actions, more than 300 actions, and we have worked in many countries. Like for example, in Mexico, we arrived to an agreement with a basketball team that they were using sustainable jerseys, but they use us to promote the way they were running the club. So my idea in the future is that we have to work together. So this is again, I'm coming back to the initial idea. We are a member of the Climate Neutral Now by United Nations. We are a member of Climate Pledge by Amazon, and we are working with different clubs. For example, 1 month ago, we played the first sustainable match in Spain against Athletic de Bilbao, and both teams we were together in this race against the claimants. So it's true that it's giving us a lot of value from our club, because many brands, when they are approached to us and they feel like they can help the club also using the Forever Green platform, almost all the big companies, almost the biggest sponsors in the world now, they have the green issues in the top of mind. So Real Betis, we were in green, so to be the green thing is something that is very logical for us. So my opinion in the future is this Forever Green platform could be duplicated in other countries, in other clubs, or in any case, the question is if we work below the Forever Green umbrella. But what I think is that this world, the environmental issues, is a very collaborative world. Always, when you talk to different companies and to different people and different clubs or about these issues, all of them are very open to help, are very open to work together. So my idea is that this platform is going to keep growing, and it's going to be one of the most important assets that we're going to have in our club, because sport results is our aim, but it's not a logical business strategy, because sport results is something very difficult to obtain. But to be a sustainable club is something that you have on your hand, so it's a really good goal to focus on it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's really interesting when we start to hear some of those success stories, such as Real Betis, but also the fact that when we touched on the clubs signing up to the UN's climate action sustainability part, it's still only a handful of clubs, only 10%. We've had a couple of questions in the chat around sort of those barriers to change. I think one from Jack Fitzsimmons, touching on some of the large upfront costs to make sustainable changes, and whether there's a lack of knowledge of how these sustainable practices could really save the club financially in the long term to ensure that they can make changes. Maybe Thom, if you can tackle that question.
Yes, in my opinion, the cost is the most challenging issue. No? It's true that now, for example, when you start a new facility from the beginning, for example, in Real Betis, we are going to build our new academic center. It's going to be one of the biggest in Europe, and because we are going to start from the beginning, it's not very difficult. It has some cost, but when you are starting from the beginning, you design that you have to use all the waste treatment infrastructures, all the electricity, to use the mobility with electrical cars, and you can organize all the new facility in terms of to be 100% sustainable. But we are talking about an old infrastructure, like for example, it's our stadium. When you want to introduce changes, it's more difficult, because you have to do a cost, to invest a cost to do something that you already done. So it's not the same. If you are going to do something from new, and if you do it in the normal way, it costs you 100, and if you do it with the environmental philosophy, it costs you 110. It's a 10% plus, but it doesn't matter, because it's in a new budget, and you feel that you're going to get benefit from your work. And this is not very difficult, but to change what is already done is more difficult, because it's a big cost, not to get something new, but just to change something that has been already done. But also something that in my opinion is very important is that what we have to try to do, maybe the most difficult thing is to change the current infrastructures, the current facilities, but it's very easy to change the way we behave. So, for example, the way we come to the stadium, if we share the cars, if we come in public transport, if we come in electrical vehicles, all these kind of things are very easy to do, are not very expensive, and it also are very important that people change the way they behave. So this is another question that for me, the easiest way is when you do something new. Of course, you have to have your green light top of mind, but also the second step will be to change the way you do the things, and the third step is the most difficult one, is to change the old facilities, the old infrastructures, the old venues that sometimes it requires a lot of money to change them into a environmental facility.
Yeah, definitely. I think you touched on a number of those challenges that clubs face. One other question that we've had is the challenge around getting buy-in from leadership. Thom, perhaps in terms of your conversations that you've had with Premier League clubs and clubs up and down the footballing pyramid, how do you get that buy-in from club leadership, especially when they've got a huge number of other priorities at any one time?
Yeah, I'm really glad that Ramón made those points around the costs. How when we talk about sustainability, infrastructure and new facilities and changing that is one important element. But decision making, travel, what products and services that we choose, behaviors, these are all things that don't necessarily come with that big sort of capital investment. And I think that's part of it. It's a little bit of fear of the unknown. It's how, if you can't upfront quantify what all of these costs are to meet a sort of long-term target like net zero by 2050, then how can you possibly make that commitment in the first place? So I think that's a mindset change, and also something that we need to see in terms of leadership and the structure of clubs. Not just some clubs, but all clubs. For example, something that we're really keen to see is chief sustainability officers in football clubs. So representing sustainability as a single issue at the highest level of decision making in football clubs, and at many clubs where they're at now is to understand sustainability as a sort of facilities management or operational issue. So things like energy management, LED lighting, switching off lights, having building management systems in place to make sure that, for example, heating, air conditioning comes on at the right times when it's needed. All of those sort of facilities management type things are very, very important parts of a sustainability picture and strategy, but they aren't everything. And you might have, that person looking after sustainability. You might have through the foundation, for example, workshops with local schools that touch upon, the natural environment. They might talk about local habitats. They might talk about how you can, attract, for example, birds into your garden and things like that, which is a very sort of it's all part of that sustainability picture. And then over here you might have a procurement team making decisions about which kits to buy or which products to use. All of this needs to come together into a sustainability campaign, which some clubs have done very well. Some clubs are still putting those pieces together and need help in doing so, and to sort of confirm those ambitions. I think what it comes down to is the structure, with clear responsibilities and a recognition that this is all encompassing. It's not kind of isolated in one area of the business. It's something that needs leadership right from the very top.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it'd be nice to touch on, I guess, when we think about one area of sustainability and the benefits it can bring is from that brand building and marketing perspective. Ramón, I know you've emphasized that sustainability for Betis is a club strategy and not just a marketing project. Could you bring to life, I guess, what you mean through that, some of the benefits that you have seen from a brand building perspective, but also perhaps the risks if you're only approaching at it through this marketing brand building lens?
Yes, the question is that in marketing now and in sponsors, all the people, all the stakeholders, the sponsorships, your fans, the media, your shareholders, are pointing out the values. So if you really become a green team, it is a great value that always go with you. It's like, so it gives you again a great economical value, because the social values now they have a real link with the economical value. It's true that in the last 2 or 3 years, for example, the biggest sponsors in football has been the betting companies, but now they are changing. Now they are the biggest companies. They are looking for IP properties that they have values on their mission and on their vision. So this is why, in my opinion, in terms of marketing, is a great opportunity to embrace the green issues. But again, you have to be very real, because if you try to do this only because it's good for your marketing values and for your marketing awareness, it will come back to you with a very bad result, because people, the population, the young people, the Gen Z, the teenagers, they know a lot about real communication, and they have many places to get information. So if you state that your club is sustainable, you have to do it. It's not just a question to say I am the greenest thing in the world, but you have to do it. So this is the challenge. That it's a circle. It's a perfect circle. If you do the things in the right way, you will get a lot of value back, because the community will see you as a real good company to invest on.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's very helpful to outline those risks of seeing it as a marketing project, rather than the real sustainability strategy that cuts across all areas of football operations. We had a question from the audience around, I guess the discussion we've had has been around the European club football and the actions taken against climate change. But the different context across the world, in particular around Latin American clubs with different economical and social contexts. What could they learn and adapt to join in this fight against climate change? Thom, I wonder whether you can kick us off on this one.
We know that the power and influence of football is absolutely huge, and it's certainly a global language, and the influence is certainly global. People across the world live and breathe football. The most followed athletes on social media are footballers, Messi and Ronaldo, and other athletes don't even come close to the numbers, and that's because of the truly universal nature of football. So in that sense, I think football has that's part of the power of football. It's incredibly global. I think what we've spoken about in terms of social pressure and the business case, it does apply worldwide. And we're seeing the example that I gave of club criteria, licensing criteria being developed in Germany for Bundesliga. We are seeing that happen. Other leagues and federations taking interest in that and trying to understand what it would mean to embed sustainability into the way that they the guidance, first of all, for clubs, but then becoming in regulation and licensing requirements. So I think it's that dual thing of what are the benefits of making these changes, and building them into design, as well as integrating them into operation and decision making, but then also the requirements that are kind of building that minimum requirement, so that as ambition raises, minimum requirements come with it as well, and setting that level playing field.
Yeah, and I think really helpful there, where you've touched upon, it's not just a club football matter, it relates to leagues, to federations. Ramon, I'd love to bring you in here. I think we've had a conversation a question from Dan Hall around, I guess, with the conversations around sustainability in football picking up, and more and more games being introduced to the calendar, whether that's an expanded Champions League, potential for more World Cups. how do we balance that conversation, and what responsibility do leagues and federations have, as well as clubs, in really furthering this environmental sustainability cause?
Well, in my opinion, they have to play a main role, no? Because at the end, federations and corporate, associations like La Liga, they are key players in our industry. So if they force the club to be sustainable, the change will be more faster, no? So, in my opinion, they have to play a key role in this world, no? And going back to the previous question, it's true that there are some clubs that they have more resources to invest. Other clubs, like maybe Latin America, they don't. But the idea that we have to put on the table is that any step that you do in terms of environmental issues is a good step. So maybe you can't change all your lighting system because you don't have money, or maybe you can create a new system to reuse the water to plant to water the pitch, or you can do a very big investment in the infrastructure. But maybe you can change something very easy. For example, the way you offer the water to the players, not using plastic bottles, but using recyclable bottles. So something like that. So any step that some of them it has a big cost, but some of them they are not very expensive. But if any of us try to do every single thing with a green mind, I think it could help us to win this war. That I'm coming back to the first idea that there is no planet B, and without planet there is no football, and if there is no football there is no Betis. So we have to do something to maintain our planet alive.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a very, very good point to land. Thom, in terms of that, I guess, responsibility that federations and leagues, you've touched on the Bundesliga example. Are there any other, I guess, examples for the audience of best practice and, the progress being made at the central level?
As I say, we know that the Premier League is working on this, and no doubt that the Bundesliga example will have inspired other leagues and federations around the world. We're working with a league system at the moment to guide them towards what that might mean for them. But that's right. I think it needs to come from both sides. It needs to be both an ambition for clubs and also increased expectation around the rules and requirements. On Dan's question, I remember that sustainability was mentioned in relation to the European Super League development that was pretty short-lived, but sustainability was used. It was saying this will allow clubs to become sustainable. Sustainability meaning, referring to financial sustainability. But exactly as Ramón said, that this is a point of view that clubs, we can't be in a position where clubs can only sustain themselves at the expense of the planet. That makes no sense. And sustainability needs to be a donut economics model where a club is sustainable, but within the boundaries of the planet and without falling short of social needs and social requirements in terms of delivering on education and rights and good jobs and all these sorts of things. So we need that much broader view of what sustainability means. And that does include, recognizing the social value of football. There's huge social value of having games being played, and we saw that through the coronavirus pandemic, how beneficial it was to have football fixtures going on, being played, and how much that gave people structure and gave people the thing they love through really difficult times. So the answer to reducing the carbon footprint of football could be to not play football anymore. But of course that has unimaginable consequences in a wider in terms of social connectivity and the value of people's lives. So balancing that environmental and social and business sustainability elements is really important. It's a really difficult balance to find, but certainly whether any proposals for World Cups and competitions going forward, they will be tone deaf if they don't have environmental sustainability as a key element of what they need to deliver against.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important point, bringing in those other lenses of sustainability to really paint that clear picture. I guess focus of this has been around the environment, and those broader metrics could take up a whole other webinar, but it's very helpful to touch on that when we're thinking about, that SROI, the social return for football. Ramon, we've had a question from the audience, from Julian Pastor, around, they understand, I guess, that to be sustainable is to be profitable, but the challenge is really changing the paradigm of clubs. From the Forever Green perspective and how you've worked, how have they supported, if at all, in the financing available for the transition? When we think about the second cost supplied and the cost to really build that sustainable culture, and whether you have any recommendations for clubs starting on that journey?
No, well, the question is that once again, I think there's a huge way in front of us. So if you don't start working, you will never arrive to the end. No? And maybe you will never arrive to the end, because in terms of climate issues, I think we are very hundreds of years back. So the goal position that we should be, But of course there are some. The idea is, for example, when we started with this project, we were in a very well economic situation. It was before the pandemic, and of course, since when the pandemic arrived, we have to stop some of the investments that they were in our budget. But of course, sometimes if you don't have money to pay the roles or to pay the players, you are not going to be able to change your infrastructures and to invest in environmental issues. But I think the transition, some clubs they will take to them many years. To others, they can do it very quickly because they have a lot of money and they can have the decisions on the board. And once you have the decision from the board, you can implement and you can be a very environmental club, green club in 1 year, 2 years. No? But the most important thing is not to have a transition, but start working, and just try to do as much thing as possible. But any single step in this direction is good for the industry, is good for the planet, and it's good for all of us. So this is the message that I want to point out once again. So there is a word that all of us, we have to work on it, and any single action that we do is good for the planet. So just do it and don't think about planning all the new strategy and looking for the money. I don't know. Start working, and just the money will arrive, and just any of us will do their best. This is my idea.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Thom mentioned at the start the importance of some of the player champions. I think what's been quite powerful from Betis' perspective is having those ambassadors within the club. I think of Hector Bellerin modelling the new kits and being quite a leading voice in that space. How have you engaged your players in really communicating those messages, and how has it resonated with fans as well?
Yes, to the fans, we normally use our normal our social media, our TV, our radio station. It's very easy to motivate our fans. But when we try to, for example, we have done a massive clean of our river here in Seville. So we have call to action to the community to clean the river one Sunday morning. No? And when we do these things, this is why we use the Forever Green platform, because we are not inviting just Real Betis fans, but we are just inviting the whole community, because there are many people, for example, many young people that they are very aware about these issues. So maybe they don't love Real Betis, but they feel good cleaning the river, no? So this is a win-to-win relation, because when we call our fans, we normally use the Forever Game platform to call all the community, and many people that they don't really love football, but they really love green issues. So we have a good engagement with them. No? So this is at the beginning, I talk about the potential that a football club we have as a speaker, no, because we can speak out and create a lot of awareness. But also we are very good, or we have the potential to activate the community, to activate people, and to do things like that, for example, to reforest one big plot of land, or to clean our river. This kind of issues that include many people, include thousands of people, include the community. We can do it using our normal channels like social media, TV, radio, are also using our football players. That this is also a good asset that we have, and all of them also they are willing to help us when we offer to them the opportunity to participate in a green project.
Yeah, brilliant, and it's really helpful for us to hear you bring to life some of those initiatives that are being championed at Betis. Very conscious of time. I'd probably like to wrap it up with this final question to you, Thom, in terms of, I imagine there are quite a few individuals working at clubs or working in the world of sports, thinking about what those, I guess, priorities should be when they're going on that sustainability journey. Do you have any tips, advice for them in terms of those initial steps that they can be making, and thinking about what people hope to achieve when they talk about 2030 or 2050 commitments, what that start of the journey looks like?
Yeah, right. Yeah, some of those long-term commitments can seem very intangible and far away. And what difference can I make myself in this this huge industry, and even wider than that. We've seen activity at most clubs is driven primarily by an inspired and passionate individual. And the impact of having somebody like that, a champion, is really valuable. If there are first steps, and I would suggest, understanding what the club are already doing. This is, part of the service that we help to provide as well. Understand all the good stories, because there will be lots of good stories already at all clubs that can be drawn on and brought together. The establishment of a working group, so bringing together like-minded people from different departments to embed that thinking. And no doubt, once you sow that seed around environmental sustainability, there'll be a lot of people who we'll have a lot of colleagues who are very much want to be involved and have lots of ideas of their own about what can be done. And not only from a club point of view, but from a fan point of view as well. It's the role of fans, I think, is really important in having that awareness and asking a club, what are you doing in this space? What are your ambitions? Because, as I say, in a lot of cases, there are really good stories going on, and there are sometimes a reluctance because of that wider lack of knowledge, or lack of clarity about how that ties into something like net zero, which who knows what that really means. Then should I be talking about this as a sustainability story, or should we just do it, but not then communicate it with fans? Whereas I think the power of communicating, even if you're on those early steps, and even just starting to think about that is really powerful in itself. So that's what I suggest: bring together like-minded people, take some initial steps, and do talk about the steps that you're taking.
Brilliant. Thank you for breaking that down, and I think thank you to you, Thom, to Ramón, for having this conversation. I think it's been really helpful for me, for you to bring to life some of those initiatives and examples that really help, I guess, understand what a club can do when it comes to the topic of fighting climate change, and also what the opportunities are to work together, both with partners, but also with the leagues and federations, to really make a material change in this space. And I'm excited to see what the next 5 to 10 years holds when we talk about the structure of football clubs and the growing significant sustainability we'll have going forward. So yeah, thank you again. Apologies if we didn't cover all of the questions from the chat. It's been great to see so many engaged people on the call, and I'll hand over to Gemma to wrap up the session.
Thank you, Harry. Thank you very much, Ramon and Thom, for your insights and the time you have dedicated to us. Thank you. And on behalf of Johan Cruyff Institute and Portas Consulting, I want to thank everyone for attending the session. As usual, it has been a pleasure to see so many people connected from all over the world to discuss an issue that I'm sure that should concern all of us. And as I mentioned before, you will soon receive a link with the webinar recording in case you want to watch the session again. We invite you to stay connected, and we will be back next month with another topic we hope will also be of your interest. Keep an eye to our social media channels where you will find all the details. Thanks again to everyone, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you.